Just half a decade ago, space looked simple. Cheap launch was here, venture capital was pouring in, and a whole generation of founders believed they could reshape the industry in just a few years. And they were wrong. In this conversation, I sit down with Dan Faber, founder of Orbit Fab, the company that forced the industry to take orbital refueling seriously, not as a concept, as infrastructure. We get into what actually happened between 2020 and now, where the money went, what the government got wrong, and why building anything in space takes twice as long and costs more than anyone wants to admit. But most importantly, what does success actually look like in this industry? Dan stepped away from Orbit Fab after pushing it to the edge of real deployment, not because it failed, because it worked. So if you want a clear-eyed view of where space is going, really going, and what it actually takes to build something that survives, join us for this. My name is Jason Canigan. I'm the founder of Cold Star Technologies, and I wanted to find out what is really going on in space and defense. So I started interviewing experts in the field, and over the past number of years have met with over 150 academics, engineers, business owners, venture capitalists, military, and government officials. I call this effort the Cold Star Project, and it's where you'll ride along with me to find out what is really going on in space and defense.
All right, Jason Canigan from the Cold Star Project. I'm back here with Daniel Faber, who likes to be called Dan, and he's recently from Orbit Fab. Previously, some of you may remember Deep Space Industries. I'm in a different part of my house, and so we're trying out a different background just for the fun of it. And I've got this other picture here of these two Italian judges that were both assassinated within 6 months in the 90s for fighting the mafia, basically corruption. And that's a Gordon Ressler thing. He shared it after a trip to Italy, talked about it, and so I went and got it and framed it. And then this other picture here, which Dan, why don't you say what this picture is of the English countryside here? Or whatever.
Oh, that's William Smith's map, the first ever geological map of England. Changed the world. Excellent map, excellent story. I love it.
I saw it and I loved it, and I could get it 2x3B, I think it is, and put it up.
The original is about 12 feet tall, I think.
Wow. Okay, and there's a whole book about it. And again, Gordon knew what it was when I posted it on Facebook a year ago or so, and said, hey, there's a whole book about it. I had to evacuate because of Hurricane Helene and the flooding last year. In September 2024. I guess it was, maybe or very early October, because I stayed here for 5 days and was the comms guy for my neighborhood. I had all the radios and stuff like that. So I was away for a couple months, and I came back to my house and I'm like, I don't know this place. I have no identification with it. So I bought a bunch of art and framed it, and then it sat around for 3 months, and then I put it up slowly. And we've still got in the other room there, Tali Savalas says Kolchak, Kojak, sorry, not Kolchak, that's the Night Stalker. But anyway, I wanted to have Dan back because I interviewed him 5 years ago, and it's amazing how fast time flies, isn't it? And we were talking about Orbit Fab, gas stations in space. It was pretty new in my time in the space industry, 2019, 2020, something like that. Again, I'll link to that in the description of the video. And I saw Dan posting maybe a month ago now. I declare success with Orbit Fab, and I'm doing something else. So I immediately reached out and said, hey, Dan, why don't we talk about your experience with Orbit Fab, what you think of the space industry? This is going to be a pull no punches interview. Dan has seen the questions ahead of time, so we're not trying to do anything mean here. I just want the honest truth, and I'm excited to have you back on, Dan. Thanks for being here.
Great to be back, Jason, and thanks. Yeah, not afraid of hard questions. Running a company, you get used to that. Bring it on.
Yep, absolutely. So what did you believe back in 2019, which was when I started my space industry journey and really did a lot of these interviews at once, that turned out to be wrong?
And one thing we believed that nobody else did that turned out to be right was that satellites should be refuelable, and everybody would get on board with that. It took a few years, but we got there. What did I believe that turned out to be wrong? That I could make that happen in 3 years or 4 years. We are now 8 years into it, and basically we're down to the last general at Space Force that's getting undermined from below and leaned on from above to actually respond to war fighters, and then the floodgates are going to open.
Okay, okay. I noticed this with Maury Baja and the whole orbital trash kind of problem, right? He was ridiculed at first. A lot of people like to forget that. I don't. I was there, and then the fashion of the moment caught on, right? And so I think, orbiting, refueling in orbit has become a fashionable idea, and like you say, it's taken a long time, right? Why do you think it takes so much longer than we expect? I mean, I guess the idea could have caught fire in 2020, during the COVID venture capital time, maybe, but what would have had to have been different?
Um, Everybody's in an existing paradigm, right? Everybody's got problems to solve, and they feel good about the things they're good at. And one thing that aerospace engineers is good at is designing satellites with one tank of fuel. There are higher efficiency thrusters. There are ways you can conserve fuel by limiting your operations and not moving around. And people feel that they're good at that. So you have to convince them that there's a better way, and to abandon what they're good at. That's never easy.
Okay, I agree. Having worked with a lot of brick and mortar manufacturing and logistics firms, terrestrial ones, it's the same kind of thing, right? They don't really want to change unless there's an emergency, and then when you help get them out of the emergency, they tend to want to go back to the way things were because they've stabilized now. But to be fair to you, you tried to make it easier for them with the RAFTI standard, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that was one of our assumptions, was that we had to make it easy. So there was a research and development effort happening with NASA Goddard to make a fueling port. I describe that effort as NASA had the world's most expensive robot arms because they can, and their suppliers sell the world's most expensive robot arms. So NASA's customer is the politicians and the general public. They didn't have to talk to what industry actually needed and think about a low-cost architecture that was very low impact on the customers, so to speak, the operator that had to integrate it. So we started with a blank sheet of paper, and we went and talked to dozens of prospective customers and users and said, what does this look like? And they said, we have no idea, you tell us. But we've got some ideas down on paper, and then we combine that with our vision of a low-cost architecture. So low weight, low power, low mass, low volume, very small volume, easy to bolt on, could replace the fill and drain valve, so you don't have to add extra valves. You're just replacing one valve with another valve. And then on the other side of the interface, like the active side, no robot arms, very simple docking, direct docking. We believe that rendezvous and docking will be solved, and that you could drive a spacecraft in to make that connection without having to carry the cost of robotics. Those are the kind of things that went into the mix. And what came out of that was RAFTI. And now we see solicitations coming out, and everybody basically wants to put RAFTI on their spacecraft because it's low swap C and low impact on the client. That matters.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Steve Blank would be very happy with you. He's very good at startups. Get out of the building, right? Go talk to your potential customers and get information, and you did that.
We actually did a dive into developing the rendezvous and docking system as well as a kit. So we looked at RPO as a kit, and we got a National Science Foundation SBIR on that and did the I-Core program. That program actually has Steve Blank, a whole bunch of videos with Steve Blank, and goes through, like, you've got to get out of the building, you've got to ask, like, they drive you to make 100 customer calls, which is a lot. And
it is.
And so we went through that, and we came out of that and said, it's not our core business to sell rendezvous and docking kits. We really want somebody else to do it, but it's not big enough of a market or core business for Orbit Fab, so we're not going to do it. The other side of that lean startup is making the hard decisions when things don't come up as you hope they will.
Yeah, exactly. And I really do recommend people go and look after Steve Blank and the rigor, Dan. Good for you for sticking to that 100 calls, because after six, I think real conversations, most people would give up, right? And say, "Oh, I know everything now," but it's not true. I encourage everyone to take that to heart. It is not true that just after talking to six customers that you know everything about the market. So very, very good. What did the space industry learn the hard way between 2020 and 2025? And I'm thinking about capital reality versus hype.
What did the space industry learn the hard way? Um, I think the US government, national security, after the establishment of the Space Force, there was a discussion inside Space Force about strategy.
Mhm.
And they chose to focus on serving the warfighter on the ground, not the warfighter in space. And so it was communications, remote sensing, intelligence gathering, PNT, those kind of things mattered. And they sidelined the people who were thinking about protecting the assets in orbit. That lasted 2 or 3 years. And now there is a serious amount of regret because our assets in orbit are, while there's a certain level of resiliency, and that did come into it, they're largely unprotected.
Mhm.
And we are now realizing that that may have been a mistake, and there's some scrambling to fix that. That's one of the things I think that the government has learned. What has private industry learned? I think over the 25 years I've been in the industry, there's been this progression of education, right? There were no entrepreneurs who knew much, right? The standard business model was give me $1 billion and I'll save the world. There were no investors who understood it, let alone all the service providers around it and everything like that. Now that's vastly different. The SpaceX effect has really helped to push that along, and the IPO coming up this year is likely to accelerate things even quicker. But now VCs are sophisticated. Space is a part of every VC's deep tech portfolio, and more companies and VCs are now having space as its own portfolio, its own vertical within the fund. That's very exciting. But not just VC, private equity, public markets, analysts, like the whole ecosystem now speaks space. The entrepreneurs are sophisticated. The service providers, the specialist legal and accounting firms and everything else understand more about how the space industry works. And we've reached a level of maturity where we're now starting to get the trolls and those kind of things. So expect to see more patent litigation and liability and all the things that come along with a mature industry, include the good and the bad. The last 5 years has been a step change in that, just absolutely dramatic from folks. The very first space SPAC, I guess, was Virgin, but that whole wave that came through 2022, 2021 was a huge learning experience for the industry. A couple of them have done very well. A couple of them haven't. I think if you bought every single, put an equal amount into every single space SPAC, you'd probably still come ahead. On a standard power law, like most VCs recognize, AST Space Mobile and Rocket Lab will get you over zero. This is good, right? This is really good for the industry.
Okay. So in terms of the financial sector, the maturity that they're getting to is we sort of understand how valuation should work. Yes or no?
I think there's still a ways to go. If you understand how valuations work in any industry, you're doing great. Yeah, until an industry is very mature and boring and it's on the bond markets and everything else, it's still venture, it's still speculation, right? There's still risk to it. No one will ever fully understand. If you fully understand, then you'll win the stock market. But people are more sophisticated in their modeling and their understanding of the risk.
Okay. Than 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Okay, I see. And folks, I trust Dan. Dan, he may not know this, but I think based on my experience, he is the guy who I would hire if I was sitting down to a discussion about cap tables with investors. I would want you to at least look over stuff and protect my interests. And I think you would do a very good job. and understanding that and saying, no, look, you need to make sure you've got this chopped out for yourself, right? You were talking about the strategy of protecting or helping the warfighter on the ground and basically ignoring protection of space assets. I've been listening to the audiobook of Tom Clancy's Red Storm Rising again, and even though it was done in the 80s, I'm surprised to hear about things like anti-sat. He's talking about it back then, right? And again, going back to Gordon Ressler, DARPA, they had the robot arms, right? Let's come up and grab somebody else's satellite. Which did bring me to the thought, and you touched on this with the RAFTI comment. How do you get one spacecraft up to another to make the connection and do the refueling?
Easier and harder than you might imagine.
Okay.
So the term used in the industry is rendezvous, proximity operations, and docking. So think of it as three different modes. The first is rendezvous. You need to match orbits. So thankfully, the US government, there are other entities, Leo Labs, for example, they're tracking so many objects in space, and there are publicly available databases that are updated fairly regularly. They're decently accurate to within a few kilometers. And so you can know where your satellite is, where the client satellite is, and use your thrusters to match the orbits and bring them into proximity. Then the second stage is proximity operations. Now you want to start worrying about not running into the other object, right? And so you're looking both at your relative speeds and positions, but you've got to make sure you're taking into account the orbital mechanics. And usually you're using the orbits. And so you'll see these little spiral graphs as they show how they spiral in closer and closer, whilst always maintaining an orbit that doesn't collide with the client. So you go from one inherently safe orbit, and then you adjust it to another inherently safe orbit that comes a little closer at some point. And when you get to that closer point, you adjust it to another safe orbit that gets you a little closer. And in that way, if the spacecraft becomes uncontactable for one reason or another, there's always glitches, right? If anything glitches, you're inherently safe. And then the final stage is docking. And now you're getting really close to where the point that the effects that each spacecraft has on the environment are noticeable on the other spacecraft. So every spacecraft affects the plasma environment around it, and affects the thermal environment and it's reflecting light. So it's affecting the optical and viewing environment. All these things start to matter. If you turn your thrusters on and they're pointed towards the other spacecraft, you will spray that other spacecraft with some really hot gases, and depending on your thrusters, there may be particles in there, who knows what. You could end up sandblasting the other satellite. You can end up overheating it, a whole bunch of things. So when you get to docking, it gets a lot trickier. And so, yeah, then you've got to cruise in, actually make contact and make it stick. When you're within a capture envelope, you need your actuators to actually close. So all those things have got to go right. The rendezvous is the easiest and relatively solved. There's a lot of people working on proximity operations right now, and there's a few people working on docking. In the next 12 months, we're going to see a lot of different technologies on that guidance navigation solution and the connection solution get trialed, and we'll know what's really working and what's not.
Okay, very, very good. You're making, again, going back to the Red Storm Rising thing, refueling some Tomcats with tankers in the air in the Earth's atmosphere sound a heck of a lot easier than this.
And that's actually a heck of a lot harder because of the atmosphere.
Okay.
The space environment, sure, it affects each other, but definitely not in the way that aerodynamics does. Yeah, the folks that started doing that, amazing.
Satellite, a bigger problem.
Yeah, satellites docking together in orbit. It's hard, but it's not that hard.
Okay. So, folks, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Orbit Fab. Give us a little summary of where you took it from and where it is now.
Where do we take it from? Gosh, we were talking with a couple of foreign governments about how they should underwrite a space commodities exchange to accelerate asteroid mining and give themselves a geopolitical strategic advantage by setting up the institutions to manage commodities exchange in orbit. And I called some of the folks that might use commodities in orbit and said, what will you buy and how much is it worth? And I was shocked when they said that fuel in orbit would, the marginal revenue for an extra kilo of fuel in orbit is $1 million. So we took it from there. That was the crux of the, well, why the hell isn't anyone doing this? Why don't we do this? All the way through to having contracts with the US government, having partnerships with commercial companies. We developed the what is becoming the standard gas cap, the refueling port for satellites. We've flight qualified all of the docking systems, all of the refueling systems. We've run benchtop refuelings and various things. We've launched the first fuel depot and delivering on the first contract to a US government customer. Should be happening this year, but launches are slipping. So maybe early next year. But yeah, multiple customer satellites, multiple delivery systems all getting launched shortly.
Okay. So you're getting to the point of flight heritage.
Correct. Yeah. So RAFTI has like the gas cap has flight heritage. The nozzle and all the docking stuff will have flight heritage very shortly.
Okay. People love that in the space industry. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
There are one type of space company, those that have hardware in space.
And the rest are
they're not space companies.
Right. They're potential. Okay. So why step away now if things are working? You've said, hey, my time at Orbit Fab is a success. That's what I read in the LinkedIn post. Why step away now then?
When we look at Orbit Fab, and so stepping back and looking at what is the job of the CEO, right? It's to build the company for the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, the rest of the management team has got to build the company for the next 1 or 2 years, right? And the next layer of management's looking at the next month. And the people on the floor in front of the computer terminals or working the benches, they're going to work on the next 5 minutes, the next day, the next week, right? But the time horizon of the CEO is always longer. And so I'm looking at what do we need in 5 years? Where is the company going to be? And almost certainly that's an IPO or similar. And so setting the company up for that. What does that growth look like? Where do we have to be? What do our processes and everything else need to be? And that's not something I've done, right? And so I had a good discussion with the lead investor of the next round after we'd agreed on the round, and said, what's the best structure for the company with this money you're bringing in, right? Here's what we've said are the big milestones. What does that actually mean concretely? And how do we set this up for the next funding round or the next or going IPO? And also want to be very honest, is that me, right? Am I the person to lead that, not having done it before? And if we're going public, the market's like someone who's done it before. Is that a team I should surround myself with? Am I going to be happy doing that job? Is it the best use of my skills? Or can I be more productive in the industry elsewhere? I enjoy taking things from 0 to 1. I've enjoyed this paradigm shift and figuring it out. And so after a long discussion, decided, let's find a great CEO. Let's do that together. And I'm gonna free up to find my next thing. So after a bit of time and progress on that, we made the announcement.
Okay. You're not sure yet what you're going to do next.
Stealth space company.
Yeah. Okay. So there is something kind of plugged in there. Okay. Well, let me go general here then. How should founders define success in this industry?
That depends on the founder and on what they're trying to do.
Okay.
I mean, if you're just in it to make a lot of money, then it's did you get out with money? But that's not why most founders do it. In fact, if that's why they do it, they should probably get a great job as a management consultant or something and pays better on average. Most founders are in it because they want to change the world. There's something that they see as inefficient or broken or just not available that they want available or something like that. And so success is, did you create that? which, for satellite refueling, hey, it's coming out in all the solicitations, right? The world has changed. Call that success. But it depends. Different people have different goals. So there's no one answer.
Okay, I see. And there's a lot of people who toil away at jobs in the defense industry, sock some money away, and then join up with some friends and start up a space company. And their goal is to get acquired by one of the big prime contractors. Why didn't you go in that direction?
Because I didn't think that the things that I wanted to achieve could be achieved within the framework of a prime contractor. There's a reason that startups that you listen to Steve Blank and those kind of things about how startups should operate. The definition of a startup, according to Steve Blank, is a temporary organization in search of a scalable business model. If you try to do that in a big company, the big company has to focus on becoming more efficient with the things that it currently knows how to do really well. They're not the most efficient organization for doing something new.
Yeah.
Because part of doing something new is disrupting that business they currently have, which is a cash cow, which they're trying to optimize. And that's better done by a small company that can risk that. Because what's at risk? The investment, then it goes away, right? It's not a corporate embarrassment. It doesn't risk the larger brand. There's a whole bunch of reasons why startups can just do things that large companies can't. Large companies can definitely do things that small companies can't. But when it came to changing this paradigm for a cost-effective, user-friendly refueling, right? But my long-term goal is to create permanent jobs in space. Where's the thriving in-space economy that can support permanent jobs? It doesn't exist yet. One of the reasons is because spacecraft aren't interacting, and that's because they don't have fuel. A large prime contractor might be incentivized to increase the profit margins on that, or structure it such that, for example, they could sell expensive robot arms. Okay, I didn't want those incentives. I wanted the incentives to be change the industry, get the industry into this mode where satellites interact, so then the next business that I can do can take advantage of that, and we can build the in-space economy.
Okay. So totally different paradigms, different approaches, and you can sloppily get into a space startup and end up that way if you're not super clear on your thinking. But yeah, not to be totally making a love in on Steve Blank here, but yeah, he has the right idea. I own a couple of his books. There's a great little website that he had. I don't know if it's still around, but it was just a great little startup sequence, right? Of click here, do this next on the website, and get out of the building and that kind of thing. And one of the things he warned against was don't take some of your money that you've got as a startup and hire some expensive VP of sales from a big company. You know this, because what they're used to is a standardized pitch. Go in, give the pitch, and startups can't do that. They are in search of the business model, as you've said. So a guy like that can't roll with the punches, and react to something unexpected and figure it out. He's got to have that standardized thing. So you need somebody who's scrappier and able to figure it out. So that's a really good reason to not follow that. Hey, let's get acquired by primes models. I guess my next question then is what is founders, or what are founders then who are entering the space sector not clear on? What do they don't understand that they really ought to? Maybe talking about financing, let's say, and ownership.
And that list used to be almost infinite. But as I mentioned earlier, there's more sophistication amongst founders and entrepreneurs now about the space industry. Hardware companies are hard. Space hardware companies are very hard. The timelines to get things to orbit can be long. And that's, you've got to build that into the model, the financing model and the plan. People coming from outside the industry often underestimate that. Those inside the industry, they've often had experience with it. So it depends what background you've got as to what it takes. But at the end of the day, 90% of it is the same. It's a startup business. The three rules are don't run out of cash and don't run out of cash. Nobody cares about the third rule. These things are common amongst all startups. Yeah, the nuance is, like every other startup, understand your target industry as intimately and deeply as possible. And that is the same across startups, but in aerospace, it's just apply the aerospace industry into that. Yeah, I think those are the main things. Like, there's no magic pixie dust. It's space. It's just that few people have done it.
Right. Okay. Well, let's get a little more granular on that then. I think this question will make sense. What does it actually take to build infrastructure in space? And this encapsulates a lot of what we've just been talking about, right? Capital requirements, customer adoption timelines, regulatory hurdles, and then you've got defense demand and commercial demand, which are two totally different things and processes, right? So talk to us a little bit about that.
So let me make an observation about the structure of the industry first.
Okay.
You'll often see numbers. The space industry is $700 or $800 billion and going to be $1.5 trillion in a few years. Most of that is downstream. The amount that's actually spent on the hardware that goes into orbit is a fraction of that. So whilst most of the downstream is commercial, and you could say most of the industry, 2/3 of the industry, something like that, 3/4 of the industry is commercial. That is true, but that is mostly downstream. If you're looking to do the actual space hardware, software, operations, whatever, 90% of that is government. 10% of that is commercial. Off that 10% of infrastructure that's in orbit, the communication satellites, and the P&T satellites, which are government satellites, the downstream markets are huge, right? Think of everything that uses position and timing. Like, Uber doesn't exist but for the satellites. How much of that business do you ascribe to the space industry? All of it? Depends how you look at it, right? But what that means is, if you want to actually do the on-orbit stuff, good odds the money you're going to get is 0, 1, or 2 steps removed from the government. And so you've just got to get used to that and understand what the government wants if you want to be able to leverage that funding. It's not to say you can't use the 10%, right, the commercial money, to create a business, but there's much more if you can tap into those government sources. I look forward to the day when that changes. I think that the commercial low Earth orbit space stations have the potential to create new industries that have never existed before. I love what Varda is doing. I love what the asteroid mining, Astroforge and Carbon Plus, I love what they're doing. There's opportunities to create new industries, new exports from space that haven't existed before. There's a handful of companies looking at manufacturing pharmaceuticals and those types of things. These have enormous potential. Not quite there yet, but they're the kind of things that could create a completely new paradigm. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree. What I have wanted for 5 years plus is orbital infrastructure so that we can hang things off of a station and start building things and have the Space Forge out there and have some resources already in space so that we don't have to kick everything up out of the gravity well, right? and maybe get some resources from out there.
The biggest problem with the space industry, the biggest issue in building infrastructure in orbit is demand. Where is the demand? Where are your customers? Why aren't they paying? Technology is not the problem. Funding is not the problem. If you can prove the demand, you can get the funding and hire the people. The regulatory is actually not the problem. If you've got the demand, the regulators want to help create this industry. They want to put America first in all of these industries. Where's your customers? Forget about everything else. The only thing that matters is customers.
Yeah. And the costs have not come down low enough yet in some cases. Like, there's companies that want to grow ears in space for surgeries, and
not a big enough market.
Yeah, you could grow.
I look at that specifically, and Orbit Fab the Fab in Orbit Fab is semiconductor manufacturing. That was our original business model. The market wasn't big enough in the piece that we thought to do, and that's the challenge, right? Is your niche market big enough to get you started and be profitable? And does it provide a wedge into a bigger market? That's a challenge. Demand. How big is the market?
It's hard because there are applications such as growing gems, diamonds, what have you, in space where there's no vibration, and on Earth we have to make these places far away from highways and things like that. But again, the dollars just don't make sense yet. What do you think it's going to take for it to start making sense?
A bunch of entrepreneurs finding markets
Hmm.
and find the cracks to be able to get off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's the market has to be big enough, and the go-to-market strategy has to be profitable and sound.
Mm-hmm. It's rough. You know, when I
Yeah.
started here, I thought I came from pure business, didn't know anything about space, and I thought, well, just get some customers and do the math, right? And you know, I did a 2 or 3 interviews with Andy Aldrin, and he quickly turned me around on that and said, no, you know, in this field, a lot of the demand has to come from government, and the funding has to come from government, as you say, right? 90% of it to begin with. And we look for the day when that starts to flip a little bit more. You know, even 70-30, I think, would be a huge change. And I have the gut suspicion, and it could be totally wrong, that when we go from 0 to 1 like this, everyone will go, of course, and then suddenly there'll be lots of applications in demand, and the dollars will make sense all of a sudden. But like you say, it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 entrepreneurs to band together and say, okay, we've got enough as a coalition, maybe, to pay for this stuff, to kick it off, right?
What you've described, where the infrastructure enables a little Cambrian explosion of ideas, that's exactly what happens, and it's typically a convergence of a few different technologies. And until they exist, people don't see what the combination of them could be. Right? So satellite servicing enables satellite refueling enables satellite servicing. But the commercial destinations in orbit, combined with satellite servicing, combined with the re-entry capability that VADA is developing, combined with asteroid mining capability, combined with the mega constellations, combined with the data centers in space, combined with the power beaming in space, what do you end up with then? And at that intersection, define for me where the killer app is going to be. I want 1,000 entrepreneurs working on things at the intersection of all of those. Because those will exist in 5 years. Skate to where the puck is going.
Okay. So again, it's like the internet, and then websites, and then apps, and suddenly we've got a whole bunch of app developers building on top of this layer. And everybody goes, of course, this is what you do.
And you couldn't have developed AI without that infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly
right. Boy. Skate to where the puck is going. It sounds easy. You got to sit there and you got to guess in a way, and get out of the building and talk to people and get hopefully letters of intent, right? You know, if I can do this, will you commit to that? And those are scary conversations that a lot of people are a little nervous to have. But if you're crazy enough to be an entrepreneur in this field, my suggestion is get over it. You know, get out there and start doing it, because there's no other way, right? Toiling away on some tech and hoping, I don't know, maybe listing on Sat Search or something like that, and hoping you get discovered is probably not the most effective way of doing it. Is there anything else, Dan, that you would recommend space startup founders do in their quest to get funding? I mean, I get approached by founders all the time saying, hey, Jason, what can I do with my pitch deck to get venture capitalists interested? And I'm like, your problems are far beyond that. And of course, they don't want to hear it. And 6 months later, you see them asking other people about their same deck, right? And it's moving the chairs around on the Titanic, right? But what advice would you give them?
Get sales.
Said with a very stern face. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. If you have sales, the investors will give you money. If you don't have sales, go get sales.
Right.
Whatever that means.
For the investor, they're like, when am I going to get my money back?
Yeah.
You've got no proven path to that. Nothing. If
That's
you
right.
have made any sales. Yeah.
And to get sales, you may need a product. Okay, get a
Mm-hmm.
product, right? To get sales, you may need a sales team. Okay, get a sales team. To get
Mm-hmm.
sales, you may need insert whatever. Figure it out. Go do that. Do
Yeah.
everything you possibly can. Define a path. Have a very good plan. Okay. If you don't have the answer is sales. If you don't have the answer, come up with a very good plan. If that plan requires money, there's no way, despite breaking your brain, that you can do that without more money, then go and sell a plan. Okay, but that plan is going to be how I get sales, nothing else.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
That is your plan. I don't care what your tech is. I
Yep.
don't care about anything except how you're going to get sales.
Thank you for saying that so explicitly. I don't care what your tech is because the people who come to me are, look, I invented this thing. It's so cool. And look
Oh,
what we could do. And I'm like, that's great.
I'm
Who's
an
your
engineer.
customer?
That part of me has now died.
Yeah. And it is exciting. Like, good. You know, you got to be energized by something to begin with. But the fuel is sales. The path to the money is sales. If you need help with that, plug for myself, come to me and let's talk about it, because a go-to-market strategy and me probably actually helping you, because I'm going to want the data myself, right? I'm going to want to know what it is and have heard it myself. Is probably what's going to happen. Is I'm going to have to go out into the market for you and with you and do this. And so
It
I'm
was
going to
an
be
interesting
careful.
comment.
Yeah.
It was an interesting comment you made earlier about don't hire a salesperson from a big organization.
Right.
We hired a salesperson, not from a big organization, but we hired sales. And it was actually not the way to get sales. A salesperson, traditional sales, there's a script. There's a product to sell.
Yeah.
There's a script. There's market segmentation. When you start, you don't get sales through that at all. It's business development.
Yeah.
You're finding partners, creating read lean startup, Eric Ries, or crossing the chasm. And it's a much more complex thing, because you have to convince somebody to buy something that doesn't exist yet, or that is from a different paradigm than what they're currently doing. And so just saying get sales, the answer is almost never hire a sales organization. Fail, right? It's find somebody who can sell things that don't exist.
Yeah, which I am good at. There's a difference between tangible and intangible sales, right? And even something like a sign for an organization can be an intangible sale because it doesn't exist yet. And somebody comes to, I used to run a metal fab shop, and 20 years ago, and I had woodworking companies who I would partner with, and they would do the router work and painting and stuff like that, and we would do the metal, the frame, the lettering, stuff like that. But the design, the customer doesn't know what they want. They just come up and say, hey, I need a sign, can you help me? And so turning that from the potential to something specific is a real challenge, right? And again, they will be fast to tell you what they don't like when they see it. They know it when they see it, right? And so you've got to have somebody who is fluid enough to take you through that process, and maybe doesn't get offended that easily as well about, hey, you didn't like my idea. I can remember one time this couple came in, and I don't know if you're into the Myers-Briggs stuff or DISC or something like that. This guy was high D, high ISTJ type, and they backed onto a golf course on their property. Again, this is 20 years ago. I remember this like it was yesterday. And so we're talking, and so, what do you want as a railing or a fence between your place, right? And we talked a bit, and I said, well, what about glass with frames? Because it's kind of neat, right? You've got a walking amusement park basically going on all the time, right? There's always something there to watch. And this guy said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I just sat there and took it because I was like, I knew enough that arguing with this guy wasn't going to be profitable. So a couple months later, never saw him again. I was at this, except for this, I was at this restaurant in West Vancouver having brunch, and I hear this, Jason, and it's the wife. And she comes over and talks a little bit. And I said, well, so what did you go with? And she said, oh, the glass. Like it was their idea. Like it was their idea, right? No apology, no, not. She was there, right? Nothing. And so as a kind of as a talking about this fluid salesperson with a startup, you have to be willing to just take that and not get your dander up and bark back, right? Because it's going to happen. And see what you can learn, see what you can do better next time. As a sales guy, I probably could have tacked something onto the end there, where I'd let the pressure out, for example, and say, look, if you guys think this over and you want to come back and talk to me about this idea, it's okay, right? I'm not going to be like, I told you so, or something like that. And he would have gone off and been like, no way, I could have left the door open for myself better, right? For them to come back instead of, well, gee, I can't go back to that guy now. I told him his idea was stupid, and now, I can't go in there and face him again. So just very, very interesting, from the field experiences that you get doing this stuff. And a guy who is, or a gal who is used to a script, who is used to, here's your customer, here are their pain points, these are the things to talk about, this is the way the conversation progresses. If you don't have any of that, they can't do it. Right? They're going to look for all this stuff to plug in, and
Right.
and it's not there. And so when you're a space startup and you're looking for somebody to help you grow the business, as Dan has said, don't hire a salesperson, look for a business development person. It's probably going to cost you a little more. And I know these startup founders are loath to spend any money, right? Any money at all. But you have to, right? I don't know how many times, Dan, and maybe you could confirm this. I've had people come up to me and say, it's $1 billion business idea, and then they're unable to invest like $2,000. Right? And you're like, do you see the incongruity there?
Part of that is, as a startup entrepreneur, you should also be in sales.
Yeah.
It's an integral part of the job, and you're selling this person on joining the company. And so, expect to pay them, but there's ways to pay them, right? You've got equity,
Right.
Part of the upside. You could do bonuses, right? Structure something so that your current cash meets their needs,
right?
And then they get as much of the upside as is necessary to get them in the door and get them excited.
Right. When you grow, they grow. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I haven't seen a lot of that creativity out there, and I don't think it's very creative, but maybe they just haven't seen it before, and so they don't have, again, something to start with. And the reason I'm bitching about this, folks, is that I have a chance here talking with Dan, who is highly experienced in this, and we obviously overlap a lot in our opinion, and so to have the chance to talk about it in public rather than just murmur about it in private is quite valuable, right? There might be 6 people who watch this who are in the right position who go, oh, I see what they're talking about. Okay, I guess I got to change what I'm doing. And that is the kick in the ass that I would like to, put into the space industry. So Dan, let's wrap up. Who do you want to talk to now, and how should they connect with you?
Who do I want to talk to? Gosh. Well, I haven't told you what the stealth space startup is.
Right,
so the highest priority.
Right.
The highest priority for me, as you might imagine, is talk to 100 prospective customers of the stealth space company, to find out exactly what they want to buy, and why. Who else am I interested in talking to? I'm interested in talking to the VCs, because now that they're more sophisticated, I want to understand at what point they like to come in. Different VCs have different philosophies, different check sizes, and everything else. So just understanding that, because a new startup's going to be positioning differently than a stealth startup. So after I've got the customers, at what point should I go talk to the VCs? That's an important question to have. And is it VC or is it some other form of capital? There's some reasons that I'm talking with regulators. There's some reasons I'm talking with other entrepreneurs. So, there's no specific names. I have a very long list that's sitting over here to my left of people that I'm reaching out to catch up with. But yeah, I want to be sure before I announce what I'm jumping into, before anything becomes very definitive, I want to take this opportunity right now to go and see the whole industry and learn what's changed in 5 years while I've been heads down building Orbit.
Interesting. And the best way is through LinkedIn or another way?
So anyone that wants to reach out to me, LinkedIn is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
I'm also often at the conferences, SAT Show, Space Symposium this week. Though I'm not sure when this comes out. There's a lot of conferences
Not
around.
This week.
It's a great way to network. So reach out on LinkedIn. Be persistent. I love talking with other entrepreneurs who have ideas and want to build stuff. That's some of the most exciting conversations that I have. My apologies if I dismantled your idea. I hope that I make it better in the challenging and the critique. But it excites me when I hear new business models and new business ideas that I haven't heard of before.
Right. Well, super exciting. Well, Dan, I appreciate you doing this.
Thanks very much, Jason. And hope this is useful to the audience.
Hey, this is Jason Canigan, host of the Cold Star Project, founder of Cold Star Technologies. And thanks for joining Dan and myself for this informative interview. I don't think you get stuff like this anywhere else. By the way, if you want to support the channel, I don't ask for money, I don't ask for sponsors, but a like on the YouTube. If you watched it there on the YouTube video would be appreciated. Subscribe if you haven't already. I hate that I have to say these things, but I generally don't, and people don't. I think this happens to me too. I'm listening to something, watching something, I really like it, I get involved, and then I absolutely forget to hit that like button. So it helps out a lot. You know, I don't ask for money for doing this. There's no Patreon. I'm not selling merch. I'm not here to make a buck with this show, right? So showing your support that way really helps. If you're listening on an audio platform, please leave us a 5-star review if that's what you believe that we deserve. It is a lot of work to do these things. I don't get paid for it. I don't ask for money for it. I don't charge for it. If you can give back to us that way, show support that way, it'd be really appreciated. If you are looking at founding a space or defense business and have found it maybe frustrating, or you've gone through the process and found it frustrating, you need my book, The Evolution of Space Entrepreneurship. Go get it on Kindle or Amazon paperback. Really, really important that you find out about these hurdles and these problems early, these pitfalls in creating a space or defense business. If you don't know about these things, I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to go out there and you're going to create, invent something, and it's going to be really neat, but you're not going to get any customers, you won't make any money, and 2 to 5 years from now, you'll be scratching your head wondering why you're bankrupt, right? And nobody wanted your stuff. So get my book. It's a super cheap investment to make in order to avoid all those problems and get started on the right track immediately, rather than finding it out by getting punched in the face for 4 years. You know? All right, appreciate you watching or listening. Talk to you soon.